Okay, good morning, good day, everyone. And we're here Tuesday here in Pittsburgh for our second day of final presentations. Oh, look at that, Pepperbox already getting ready, stepping up. So, real quick, I'll start spotlighting them. I don't see any guests as of yet. So we have 4 presentations. They each have 15 minutes. You can keep track of time because we're all on computers. Pepperbox goes first, then Fearless Night Owls, then Help Appear, and civrep. And we'll have 5 minutes Q&A. Faculty first, but anybody can ask. And if you are not presenting, if you could turn off your mics and cameras just so we can spotlight those teams. Here they come. Who wants to be spotlit? One more. We're there. There's Josh. Oh, he's in the spotlight. Who am I missing? Sheena, sorry. There you are. All right, that's all of you. Whenever you are ready.
Great. Okay, well, let's get started. Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the final presentation for Pepperrocks Productions. Our faculty advisors on this project are Chris and Ricardo. As part of our pre-production package, we are delivering a game design document, development schedule, a demographic analysis of our customer base, and a portfolio of concept art, which we believe will set up the production team well in the future. For our metrics matrix, we decided the 3 most important things for our experience were documentation, art style, and storytelling. Our goal for Pepperrocks Productions is to create a pre-production package, which includes an evocative game design and concept artwork describing an engaging game in which stakeholders might want to invest. So what is our game? Package Delivery is a lighthearted 3D platformer game where a flightless bird explores Paramosley, a woodland city, by delivering various packages to a diverse cast of animals. It is aimed at players between the ages of 10 to 16, and now Andrew will discuss our demographic more in depth in the development schedule.
Thanks, Sam. Quantic Foundry is a market research company focused on gamer motivation. They combine social science with data science to understand what drives gamers. They published information on gamer types for 2020's GDC. More specifically than the 10 to 16-year-old age range, our game is targeting the Gardener gamer type, people who enjoy task completion for its own sake, and enjoy playing Animal Crossing and Super Mario Odyssey, 2 games our game drew inspiration from. Here is an image of our estimated development schedule. This schedule was used to help us estimate the total production cost for the game. To quickly summarize the financials, the game will cost $6.3 million and take 21 months to make with a team of 31 people. Now back to Em to talk about feedback from softs.
Thank you, Andrew. So some feedback we received from softs was that overall there seemed to be no clear sense of what the player does and what was exactly the player experience. So for these 2 issues, we created an animatic that illustrates gameplay moments in a level. We also received the feedback that the narrative felt a little shallow. So for this, we evaluated the story arc we had and broke it down into a 5-point story arc that recurs throughout the game. So in our narrative, Peck is a flightless bird who comes from a long-running family of flightless birds. They have a dream of becoming a male bird after seeing posters of other male birds delivering citizens' mail and bringing them joy. Peck joins the Air Force, but realizes that it cannot traverse the environment the same way that other birds do with flight. Looking around the environment that obstructs Peck from their goal, they are able to think of new ways to maneuver around the different routes they are assigned. They find many unique ways of overcoming the environment with new travel methods and bring joy to the citizens by delivering their mail, much like the birds Peck once admired on the posters. So now we will play a short animatic that demonstrates brief moments from the gameplay.
Okay, in terms of game design, throughout the semester, the design team has been putting together an extensive game design document detailing every aspect of gameplay. The game design document spans over 70 pages and covers aspects such as baseline story, mechanics, and designs of various interfaces. Mechanics are centered around running, jumping, picking up and throwing objects, and using a Peck attack at enemies. Additionally, Peck can create and ride along zip lines, which allows them to navigate across platforms they're not able to fly across, like other birds can. Attaching their rope to predetermined poles in a level, Peck uses a hook they carry to zip line across gaps with packages. Along with a hook, Peck also uses an oversized leaf as an umbrella, a glider, and a makeshift boat. This allows them to travel in midair over non-zipline gaps in the water and protect themselves and the package from various overhead obstacles. The game is package-centric, where navigation of the level requires not only management of the player, but also the package as well. The game's health bar is actually centered around the package rather than the player, and if the package breaks, it requires a reset of the level. Because of the package being vital to gameplay, level design will vary depending on the combination of the package's size, weight, and fragility. Each will affect gameplay in their own independent way. To talk more about level design, I will pass it off to Josh.
Thanks, Brandon. So moving on to level design, each biome/level will have a different addressing system that the player have to figure out to navigate throughout the world. The player will puzzle out the symbols on the letters as a means to find its own destinations. Levels will focus on delivering mails to unique locations scattered throughout the game world. Deliveries will be split into batches of increasing difficulties. Each batch will have a combination of both the central hub area as well as one branch to navigate through. 60% of the delivery happens in the central hub area, while the rest of the 40% happens in the one branch that branch out from the central hub area. The players will utilize all the aforementioned mechanics to solve all the challenges and finding out each biome's addressing system, while also playing with how the biome/level is designed as well. Levels will be littered with the NPCs participating in their own daily activities throughout the game world. Talking to them will reveal lore, hints about the level, and sometimes even open up side quests that don't specifically involve delivering mails. Lastly, each level will feel like a livable space. Flourishes of infrastructures, decorations, public goods, and a sense of community will present throughout the level. So this way, not only do they provide an extra layer of engagement to the player, but it also provides landmarks
for the player to remember as well as help them navigate throughout. Next, to talk about our main protagonist, Peck, let me hand it off to Shinu.
Thank you, Josh. So Peck has gone through an extensive amounts of changes during the course of a few months. In the beginning, everyone on board, and not only just the art team, were able to pitch and present their own ideas on how a flightless bird like Peck was going to look like. So Peck started off as a dodo bird, changed to a penguin, and then finally was made a fictional flightless bird species. We narrowed it down, reiterated, and combined working aspects of different designs until we reached our final design, which is highlighted in green. Taking inspiration from previous iterations, our final design makes use of an overall round shape language in terms of the body, many protruding feathers, and lastly, a big happy smile. Peck's round body emphasizes his cute and cuddly personality, while his sharp feathers highlights the fact that although Peck may be cute, he's still someone worth taking seriously. To make Peck stand out from other bird NPCs and sell to the player that Peck is indeed a flightless bird, we designed him to have a short arm-like wings, stubby tail feathers, and thick legs. Various different designs and sketches were presented when it came to Peck's accessories, but in the end, we were left with either a male backpack or a satchel. We were split about these two at first, but after listening to feedback from the playtest mentioning how Peck looks more like a student than a male bird with his backpack, we went with the satchel. Peck's male hat, constructed from a leaf and acorn, was designed to emphasize how low of a position Peck is starting out at the post office, showing how he's not worth having an actual male hat at first. Previous designs had the hat look more like a beret, but the later and final designs made the hat look more natural. Once everything is designed for Peck, a 3D model of him is made. A model sheet and expression sheet was made to help guide the modeling and rigging process. And the model was then made. Lastly is the color palette. What we wanted to achieve with Peck's color is not only to make him stand out from the environment, but also paint him as a kind of encaring character. To achieve this, our final color palette makes use of warm oranges, whites, and pinks to paint Peck's gentle personality and visually exotic nature. Lastly, so here's the model, which was made in ZBrush and then retopologized and rigged in Maya. And so from concept to reality, from 2D to 3D, Peck was born.
Thank you, Shinu. So coming to the environment, we chose temperate forests as our ground reference for the following reasons. They are a natural habitat to woodland creatures. They have different layers to leverage for intuitive gameplay, and the overall broad and flat style of leaves and trees went along with the style of our game. So we were trying to combine realism and fantasy. The shapes, composition, world building, and color palette in these images inspired our initial art direction. We put to paper our initial thoughts on how this world might look like. We tried to construct certain world building elements and also define the stylization of this world further. We then started designing a bigger picture, which eventually led us to establishing our world Pepperrocks, made up of 8 distinct biomes. From our playtest results, we realized that a combination of description of the biomes, concept art for the same, and a gray box level using the concept art will together help give a better sense of our world to the production team in the future. So as seen in the animatic, you begin at the dense forest biome. We used warm and inviting colors to make it look welcoming. Traversing the branches is the main challenge here. In the blooming meadows biome, focusing on the mechanic of jumping from mushroom to mushroom was important. So warm, vibrant colors were used to capture this blooming effect. For the river, navigating the current and using debris to deliver to homes was important to communicate. So cooler tones were added to emphasize on this danger aspect. In the lakefront grove, main challenge is floating packages across water to homes. So warm and cool colors were used here to balance the welcoming nature of the residents with the challenge of possibly losing the packages. We also added some more additional environments for the other biomes after softs. Coming to the technology in this world, we wanted the objects or the tech in this world to look like they were a part of Pepperrocks. So for example, a post office in Pepperrocks is constructed within a canopy of leaves, have a bunch of leaves representing a notepad, a stick-like pen to write with, and a mailbox made of stem and leaves. We conveyed this to our designers who then set out to establish the tech in this world. This tech document enlists all the details about the tech, its category, uses, and all the other additional notes. Here is an example of a camera, a radio, and lastly, package, all inspired by nature. We believe that this tech document, along with the above concepts, should help establish world building for the future artist teams. So compiling all our art together, our art documentation thoroughly covers all details for the art assets of characters, environment, and tech in our game. To conclude, Pepperbox Productions is the goal of Pepperbox Productions is to create a pre-production package which includes an evocative game design and concept artwork describing an engaging game in which stakeholders might want to invest in. Thank you, and we are now open for questions.
All right, great job, team. Congratulations on your final presentation. So any questions, just throw them in the chat or raise your hand and Dave can help moderate.
Go ahead, Jesse.
What do you guys think is the biggest unanswered question about your game?
That is a great question. It's that's hard to say, I guess, because we wanted to keep some of it open for a production team to take from here, theoretically. From an art perspective, I'd say we could iterate more on the environment. So I feel like there's maybe some unanswered questions in terms of specifics of the environment, but from a game design perspective, I don't know. Brendan?
Well,
Yeah.
I guess maybe I should ask the question differently. What would you recommend that a follow-up team prototype first?
Primarily just trying to get level design together. One aspect of doing the pre-production package was primarily on putting together mechanics that will work well. We did iterate on level design, but for each and every biome and their specific challenges, not everything was able to be tested. So really focusing on prototypes that utilize those mechanics in strong ways and levels would be probably what the next team would want to do.
And also adding on what Brennan has said, I think working level design as well as the mechanics working in tandem. So it's better to just prototype them first and then figure out if they're at the right pacing, and also like levels, are they requiring all the skills of the player to complete? And that is like, I think the most important thing to prototype early first.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, also answering Bob, yes. There are different elements of comedic elements in the game. Yeah, different kinds of humor.
Why did you decide to add comedic comedy to it instead of making it super serious and whatnot?
Well, part of the aesthetic is definitely a cartoony aspect, and plus the game is about meeting and talking with different characters throughout the game. So spicing humor in only makes sense to help keep player interest as well. Plus, funny games are fun to play.
And the core of the game, we wanted to be lighthearted. We kind of went in with that, and we believe that humor and sort of these little tidbits really help to keep it, have that lighthearted, fun feel while also being connected to Peck.
And adding to that our character design for Peck also has a comedic element with his shape language and his attributes. So.
Thank you.
I've got a question. Do you have any games you look at to as similar or examples for the gameplay?
In terms of gameplay, our two main inspirations were games like Mario Odyssey and games like Animal Crossing. And so trying to strike a balance between fun platforming and puzzling mechanics versus meeting and talking with people and exploring a space that's lived in is kind of what our game focused on as a challenge in terms of design. So.
Thanks.
All right, that's time. Thank you so much, team. Congratulations on your final presentation. If you can turn your mics and cameras off, I'll remove you from spotlights. And if Fearless Night Owls are ready to go. Turn your cameras on and I'll find you. Here we go. All right, that's everyone. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, let's start. So, hi everyone. We are Team Fearless Night Owls, and we are making the project called the Udivo. And here is our team: JD, our technical artist; Harry, our 2D artist; Milion, the producer of the team; and Ariana, our 3D artist. And here are our instructors: Rose, John, Mo, Kyle, and Ricardo. So, about our project, our goal is that we have created a live action animated film called Udivo, which is a story about a person who lives in a soul-consuming forest. And we also prepared a pre-package about magic ink for future animation team. And then I will hand over to Harry.
Thank you, Leon. So for pre-package, we are working off of a completed story outline about the conflict between a wizard and the alchemy runes that he brought to life, and aim to deliver a visual concept guide for the next team. Our goal is to communicate the desired art style clearly and let the next team get what they need for the animation: the color palette, the visual concept of the living alchemy rooms and the environment, and the technique they need to consider to recreate the visual design. Next slide, please. So here are some of the visual concepts that we want to deliver. On the left is the workstation layout where the main alchemy experiments take place. On the right is an example of a sequence camera shot that we want to communicate what the general viewing experience looks like and feel in this first-person view animation. Next slide, please. We made several concept iterations of the alchemist rooms for the next team, as those rooms gonna be the main character of the animation. As you can see, the rules evolve because we had to take consideration of the scope. We finally decided to go with making the room carry the element and the feature it presents without changing their runic shape, so they are both simple and iconic. We want the next team to have a chance to create a unique, powerful piece without overpressuring themselves during the process. To conclude, we will deliver a visual concept guide based on this completed story outline to the next animation team and communicate how to implement those visual design elements in the pre-package. Next, Leon will talk more about the production.
Thanks, Harry. So about our production goal, what we given from a previous animation team is we are making a mixed media animation, which means the virtual environment character with the live environment. But we made some skill set shift since we have no riggers in our team. So we decided we will make a live action animated shot, which means the live footage with the virtual environment. And with the story about a haunted forest, we came up with the idea Udivo. Next, I will talk more about our pipeline. So we begin with developing storyboards according to the given prepackage and created animatics to lock down the time for each shot. Then we started the asset production, which includes modeling the virtual environment and shooting the live action footages. Then we considered the green screen footage and the environment rendered together. And next, we feed the composite into the post-processing process, when we could manage our layered renders and create various visual effects. The pipeline helped us a lot during the whole semester. Next, I will hand it to Ariana.
Is it just
Ariana,
me
for
or-
some reasons, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything.
Pressing your, yeah,
So sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I'll start
There
over.
you go.
Yeah. So next I will talk about the environment art. We need a forest surrounding that is creepy and mysterious. We took the idea from the environment concept that are included in the pre-package and completed the idea with more details. We observed forests in the nature as well as forests in horror films. Then we came up with an idea to create an old and dead forest. The forest environment should be foggy and gloomy. In addition, We want the trees to have extremely weird shapes to emphasize on the horror feeling. To design the trees, they have odd shapes, twisted branches, intertwined roots, and cracked bark. There will be no leaves on tree because we want audiences to feel that this is a dead forest. The ecosystem will also reflect the liveliness of the forest, where withered grasses, broken tree trunks, and rocks are all over the place. During the modeling process, the major challenge is to make sure the assets and scenes render correctly and beautifully in Arnold. Our environment is relatively dark and colorless, so lots of changes to texture details are made to ensure the final scenes deliver the feeling that we need. For mask creation, we're aiming to create masks which look like realistic human face with cracks and rough textures. The high poly version of the mask is made based on the concept art. Then it was baked to the low poly model for rigging and animation. We also developed a set of different textures that when many masks appear on trees, there is a bit more diversity for their looks. The mask of protagonist is made based on the look of a protagonist's face, with a unique textures that it is distinctive from the rest of the masks. For tree creation, speed tree was used to procedurally model the rough shape of trees. The high poly version of the trees are sculpted in ZBrush, and the low poly model are made and UV'd in Maya. Finally, the look depth of the trees are completed in Substance Painter and Arnold. A challenge we encountered was to make high-resolution details for objects showing in close-up scenes. Two examples are the tree body and ground texture. Our first attempt is to use Udivo to increase the texture resolution in a specific region, but the result was not very convincing. In the end, we added additional geometries, such as individual tree bark pieces for the tree body and used tiling nodes in the Arnold material to significantly increase the texture quality of the ground to get a much better outcome. Next, let's welcome JD to talk about the iterations.
Thank you, Ariana. So now I'll be introducing some of our important iterations throughout the production process. And since we're rendering in layers, we have the ability to adjust the renders in post, and it saved us a lot of time for re-rendering sequences and helped us to iterate faster. We separated the scene according to the relationship between the asset and the protagonist, and rendered out the scene as foreground layer and background layer. In this way, we can easily composite the green screen footage in. Layered rendering is also very flexible in fixing the sequences after render. For example, from the playtesting, Commons has pointed out that the mushroom in this shot is very distracting. In order to fix that, we rendered out some bushes as a separate layer and covered the mushroom. It helped us a lot in reducing the distraction and added the atmosphere of being peeped by something in the spooky forest. This is another example where there was a render glitch next to the character's head. As the other parts of the scene are all good to use, re-rendering the whole scene is not efficient at all. What's more, the camera in this shot is a moving camera, which means we cannot drop the render into Photoshop and use a clone stamp to fix it. As a result, we put a mask in the corresponding place in our Maya scene and rendered out the mask as a separate layer, and then composite the layer into the shot. We are also using CryptoMatte to get access to scene assets in the post process. So for example, if we're not satisfied with the lighting of the tree in the foreground, we can use CryptoMatte to create a matte for that specific tree and use that matte as a mask to apply adjustments. Layered rendering also enabled us to make visual effects in post, and we can benefit from its flexibility. In this shot, we rendered out the symbol as a separate layer, and with this layer, we can easily apply the filters and effects provided by After Effects and create the particle system of the symbol fading away. What's more, light matching is also a part that takes several iterations. We started with a storyboard to design the layouts for each shot, including a lighting plan. And then we make blocking assets to help us understand the volume of the shot. With this in mind, we went to the green screen room in the ETC building and set up the lights accordingly. With the footage and the shot designs as a reference, we then set up the virtual light sets in Maya and rendered out the assets. Finally, we composite the render of the environment and the footage together and applied some color corrections to match the color tone and exposure for the two pieces. And next, I'll go into our production part. And a big thanks to our sound designer, Catherine. She helped us to iterate the audio according to the sequences throughout the semester, and a new audio version is in progress. we're expecting that version by the final playthrough. And now let's start to watch our little film. We're also posting a link to our video on YouTube. Next, let's welcome Leon to talk about the lessons we've learned in this semester.
Thank you, JD. So I want to talk more about lessons learned as an animation team. So first one is, it is very important to design pipeline layers from the start of semester. The team should always keep in mind to label each shot with a pipeline layer, so they can always have a common vision of the shot and sequence. And also, a management system like Shotgun will help the team a lot to track down the process of each shot. Next, for the 3D assets, when making assets and props, we should always test them in the render space as the newest version. Due to the difference in lighting, color, and layout, also the use of different software. In the pipeline, the consistency is very important. For the post-processing, it is very important and powerful in the pipeline. There's no need to finalize everything in render space. Post can complete many same effects in the render space while saving a lot of rendering time. And also, adjusting a storyboard and design is a very essential process and should be taken seriously. More design options are neat, but narrowing down excesses and less valuable options are more crucial because those sketches might cause more frustration. So here, we want to say special thanks to all faculties and alumni and students help us during the whole semester about our playtesting and about our production. And here, we are Team Fearless Night Owls. We made a live action animated film called Udivo, which is a story about a person lost in a soul-consuming forest, and also a pre-production package for the next animation team. Here we open for questions. Thanks.
All right, congratulations team on your finals. Any questions, put them in the chat or raise your hand and Dave can help moderate. Good job team, congrats.
Go ahead, Ralph.
All right, guys, it's looking good, guys, but I have a more of a generic question, and I'm curious about what your experiences or what you felt about the pipeline production, balancing the idea, the tech pipeline, and the actual creative input of these little details that make something like this come alive and believable. I know it's a generic question, but let me hear it.
I think I can take part of that. I think because this is a special piece that requires the mixture of virtual assets and also the live footages. So we're considering the technical points in the very beginning of the semester. So for example, how should we do the camera tracking and how we should do the light matching. So from that perspective, pipeline development is the thing that needs to be considered in the very beginning. So after we lock down the pipeline, we will start to creating those little details of the assets that we decide to place everywhere in the scene. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
No, it does. And does it, if you would have had another semester, would you be working more on the details of it? I mean, what else would you have liked to put in if you had more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So because of the limitation of the render time, so actually a lot of things are we're still wanting to adjust some of the details in the render scenes. So definitely, if we had more time, we'd like to fix all the tiny details, like adding more variety of the trees and the foliages into the scene.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
So in the animation, there's a repeated symbol that keeps happening. I'm wondering what was the inspiration for it, or what is it supposed to look like?
I think I could explain that later. Actually, it's a really tricky question. It's also really good that you mentioned that. The symbol is actually more like a trap because this forest has its own like consciousness to lure the people in and consume the soul. So the symbol is more like a trap to lure the traveler into the forest. If that answers your question. And as for the inspiration of it, it's more, as you can see, it's more like a spidery around it, and it's creepy looking. For the inspiration, there's no general inspiration, but it's more from the I believe it's one of the movie that has the similar symbol to this one. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thanks, Ru.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I have a question about the choice of audio. Windy sound in a forest is spooky, but windy sound implies there's wind, and you have a lot of blades of grass. I know they're dead, but they're still blades. If you had more time, would you animate the blades more, move them more to give a better match between the visuals and the audio?
That's a good question. So we definitely want to polish all the details, like animating the grass. But we have an iteration that we are adding some moving branches due to the wind in the background. So maybe they're so tiny, so they're not so visible, but we have those layers that adds a bit of more the existence of the wind in the visuals.
Yeah, it picked up for me mostly because the wind sound is so emphasized in the audio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we also talked about with Catherine about this, and she also we iterated several versions about wind and background soundtrack during like during the semester, and she willing to help like to adjust some sound and matching it, make it more matching with the like the visual screen if we have more time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Steve, you got a question?
Tell me more about your tiling node strategy with Arnold in the ground plane.
Yeah, I can take that. So, so can you go back to that page if possible?
Yeah, let me think. Is it in there?
Next page. Yeah, this one. So for the ground texture, we began with like, just using like a 4K or 8K for the texture, but it's like far from enough. Like we definitely need more resolution in like a small area. So we want to use the tiling nodes in Arnold. And that's just like, you have to have like a square plan, first of all, and then you just input like the square-shaped texture map into the plan, and then with the tiling nodes, you can randomize, like you can input 2 or 3 textures together and like just mix them up to kind of break up like the unities, like it's like not all like uniform. And then you can also adjust the color and differences. So it ended up with a really like randomized and high resolution ground texture for the whole piece.
Okay, but did you have to give it some number of tiles and make sure they were seamless? Did you have to prepare them as seamless yourself, or did it had some way to handle it?
All the textures I made them like in Substance Designer, and I believe they came up like by default is like seamless.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
All right, that's time. Congratulations, team. Good job on your finals. So if you can turn your mics and cameras off, we'll get you out of spotlight. And if help up here can get ready, we'll get you spotlit for your finals. All right, that's all of you, whenever you're ready.
All right, so hello everyone, we're Help Up here, and this is our final presentation. This is our team. Our faculty instructors are Jess and Mo, and we're a student pitch project. Our goal was to help teachers run more effective group activities on Zoom and to do it more easily. Currently, there are a lot of video conferencing softwares that are used for remote learning, but none of them is built solely for educational purposes. With lots of research and work with teachers who have thoughts on how to make remote teaching better, it inspired us to pitch this project. After reading up on research and canvassing with our target audience, we set out to design Help Up Here to support remote peer teaching through research backgrouping methods and breakout room data. We wanted to build a teacher-facing product integrated in a platform that they're familiar with, and we wanted to incorporate best practices from CMU research. While considering our scope, we made the decision to design Help Up Here for quantitative subjects, specifically math, and for teachers who teach upper elementary students. We then pitched our design pillars: smart quizzing, smart grouping, and small group support. Our first pitch design pillar is smart quizzing. Quizzing is a straightforward way to evaluate student understanding for new materials, especially in quantitative subjects. Smart quizzing contains a simplified process for teachers to gather data on student performance through quizzes. This data, in turn, can improve their teaching. Our second pitch design pillar is smart grouping. Based on research, we know that different kinds of groups are productive for different types of learning. Combined with smart quizzing, smart grouping provides teachers the tool to group students in ways that will help them the most. Our third design pillar we pitched was small group support. Small group provides teacher data from breakout rooms, which allows teachers to check on students like how they do in traditional classrooms and provide students with individualized attention. However, we quickly realized that Zoom's current tech does not support gathering data from breakout rooms, which was crucial to what small group support was about. Data-augmented student support, which is automatic data collection on student participation in a Zoom meeting, however, is something that Zoom Tech does do well. Bob will elaborate about our design shift later. Data-driven student support provides teachers with data to back up their evaluation of their students, as well as automatically generated reports for teachers to keep track of information from all of their class sessions. While we designed Help Up Here as a product for upper elementary students for math, teachers have mentioned that they felt like Help Up Here has the potential to be subject and age agnostic. Although we weren't able to gather data from breakout rooms like we initially set out to do, we were successful in achieving smart grouping. Additionally, we were also successful in finding ways to collect data that is meaningful for teachers. We set out to design Help Up Here to be a teacher-facing product integrated into Zoom, which is exactly what we did. However, teachers weren't the only one demographic that found help appeared to be useful. Ryan will elaborate on this later in the presentation. We have incorporated best practices from research. Additionally, we have added features after our interviews with teachers and learning from them. At HAFS, we have discovered and are making steps towards overcoming tech challenges. We have also completed a version of the wireframe and completed a round of Think Aloud interviews with that wireframe. Next, I'll hand it over to Lou, who will talk about UI/UX design.
Thank you, Karen. In order to better help teachers understand and use the 3 pillars, we set 3 design goals that guide our iterations after HAFS. First, easy flow. Prioritize the user's need to simplify the steps and design intuitive actions to get users through the whole flow. Second, clear hierarchy. Categorize features that highlight our 3 pillars to help users locate where they want to go efficiently. Third, simple UI. Apply simple colors and art style to keep teachers focused on the class instead of the interface. And next, we're going to show you 3 design iterations of how we apply these goals. The first, note-taking. Teachers can select students from participants list and take note of their performance anytime during the class. As you can see on the top is the old version. The note-taking area and the participants area are separate. During playtest, we found that it's pretty hard for teachers to see the connection between these two. So on our current version, we combine 2 sections together and use colors contrast to differentiate the selected section and unselected section. The second design iteration is quiz creation. Teachers can use this interface to input questions and answers to create quiz on the fly. In comparison with old version, we added an area that allows teachers to preview all the questions they created before. This way, they don't need to close this window and go back to the question list to check, therefore avoiding jumping back and forth. Besides the layout change, we added 2 new features, import question from CSV and upload image, which provided teachers with more flexibility. The third iteration is breakout room settings. Here, teachers can set group size and group type, and HAP can help generate the groups. Different from the older version on the left, we designed a new area that displays teachers and TAs, which is easy for teachers to assign TA to different breakout rooms to assist students. And also we can notice that in each room, students' names are in different colors. Red is low-skill students with less than ideal performance on the quiz. Orange is for students with mid-skills level, and black is default state. And in order to help teachers understand the group logic better, we changed the language of some terms. Homogeneous to similar skill level, heterogeneous to very skill level. And next, Bob will talk about the tag.
Thanks, Lou. So if people remembered from HAF, there were 3 things that we wanted from the tag to accomplish. So we needed the breakout room function in order to do smart grouping. We needed a modern UI UX so the teachers would feel comfortable, and something that would allow us to iterate a bit quickly. And the platform we reached out was Windows SDK for Windows. And when we decided with that, we were building on top of C#, we were modifying the wrapper, which was in C++, and for certain features, we were using the Win32 API. And the general GUI is made with Microsoft WPF. Now, there are certain things that Zoom can do pretty well, and for that, I'm going to start to share my screen. Now, the thing that Zoom can do pretty well is that we can switch to questions, so students wouldn't have to alt tab between the things, and we can alternate between them quite easily. Another thing that we can do pretty well in groups is that how responsive this thing is because it's built in C# and C++. So I can just update these groups right away. And as you can see, as I update and change here, the changes go out throughout the UI, and we can modify these easily. And the last thing that we added recently was that as I'm talking, my contribution goes up and we can make notes here on the side to let us know what we're doing well. And we can also keep count of how many times I raise my hand, knowing who's being the most participant. And as you can see here, even though Drew is introducing the different members, he only contributes 5% of the discussion. So I'm going to stop sharing and we can go back to the slides. So there are certain things that Zoom can do well, but there are other things that Zoom can't do well. One of the things that you can't really make it free and open software simply because in order to use the Zoom SDK, you have to pay $15 a month for it. Another thing is that we relied on the breakout room functions, but those APIs were broken from the Zoom side, and those weren't discovered, and they weren't discovered to be broken until early April. Kind of a hinge point for us is we couldn't get analytics from the breakout rooms. A lot of teachers wanted to see what's happening within the breakout rooms and get a few analytics from there, but we've been technically blind of what's happening in that part of the discussion. So that caused us to reiterate and really focus on what we could present as data for teachers. And the data we wanted was to reinforce their intuition. For the first use case we thought of was see who has their video on. A lot of classes require students have their video on, and it's quite tedious to check mark who has it on and who doesn't have it on. Another use case is grading effort. Simply by knowing who's been raising their hand the most, who's been participating or contributing to the discussions is quite nice to have as a feature. Another one is basically simply who has a weak Wi-Fi. If you know who users are leaving at the start of the semester, you can quite accommodate it throughout. Now, another thing is this data is actually helpful for researchers, and you can actually find surprising associations. So we can also do this question of basically, does voice participation actually lead to better learning, and how strong is that association? Ryan Eckert can now go through playtesting.
Thank you, Bob. So as a delivery project, being able to playtest early and as frequently as possible in order to validate both our design and programming decisions was a critical part of our project. We tried to get as close to our target demographic as possible, but we also widened our scope in order to playtest just as much as possible. As a result, we ended up playtesting with a wide variety of teachers, academics, and students in order to test Help Appear in multiple capacities. So from our playtesting, we received a lot of important feedback, a lot of which we already talked about earlier in this presentation. However, our extensive playtest also helped evolve Help Appear beyond our initial vision. So one of the best examples for this is note-taking, which is a feature that we really didn't plan on having in the first place at all. However, in our early interviews and the fly playtest, we found that teachers really like the ability to take notes on specific students. And so we did incorporate this feature into our final design. This also made us think a lot about the power of contextual assistance, as well as leaning to the strengths of Zoom as a platform in order to provide a better tool-assisted teaching experience. To take this a step further, after implementing the notes feature and playtesting that, we found that while teachers still appreciated it, it was difficult to use in a live setting sometimes, depending on the teacher workflow. This pushed us to incorporate data tracking and data export, or perhaps like a means to take notes on behalf of the instructor. And this also further leaned into the strengths of Zoom SDK as a platform by having access to all those SDK callbacks. We also got a lot of feedback from SOS, which helped provide a final definition to the Help Appear application and project. So one piece of feedback we got is that while Help Appear provides assistance and automation, it isn't always transparent how Help Appear is trying to help the teacher. And so, like Lou said, we added some colors and UI changes such that it becomes much more clear about what Help Appear is doing in order to, for teachers to make more informed decisions about how they should structure their classroom and classes. Another piece of feedback we kind of implicitly received is to think more about the contextual usage of our own Help Appear functionality. So we received lots of questions for Help Appear's ability to be used as an assessment platform, which is one way to use it, but it really isn't leaning to the strengths of Help Appear as a tool. Help Appear's smart quizzing function is real strength is to take very quick temperature checks of classroom and then use that to make very quick broad generalizations of the students, which the teacher can use to create groupings based off what they know of the class and the assumptions that have previously been found out. And we found that our documentation really didn't reflect this well. And so as a result, we were able to iterate upon our usage documentation in order to better reflect the strengths of the tool and give more precise recommendations about how to use Help Appear. Responding to all the playtesting and faculty feedback brings us to our final deliverables. So we believe that we're able to push Help Appear to the extent of the current technological reasonability, aka what's pretty much usable at this point. While the current technology gaps prevent us from going last, say 10% and delivering a product that's truly user-friendly and for teachers, as a tool, it is still very helpful and has a great value add, both for teachers as well as for other demographics such as researchers who have the ability to jump over the various barriers of entry. And then for deliverables itself, of course, we have the functioning Windows application, as well as access to the backend code. We have the design package that Lou created as a guideline and recommendations for future developments. And we also have compiled the necessary documentation for Hopier to exist beyond this project. And so this consists of two main pieces: a usage guide for people who would like to use Hopier as an application, and a development guide that generally explains our design decisions and considerations for any future development. As to what this means for Hopier as a product, Hopier still retains an important niche in the remote learning space. What Hopier really does is it takes Zoom, a generally used application not specifically designed for teachers or education, and narrows that niche specifically down to teaching. This is distinct from other tools in the space which attempt to have similar outcomes, in that it has access to the SDK and can make very good use of that contextual information. As to where Hopier ends to be beyond the scope of this project, we've been talking to the learning science faculty, specifically John Sewall from HCII, who has expressed interest in Hopier both as a tool as well as an area of further research. We also have our documentation, which we've been working on and is available to the public. Special thanks to all of these partners, faculty members, teachers, and especially John Bailash, who has been very generous in helping us find schools to playtest with and other teachers. We are Team Hopier and we are taking questions.
All right, congratulations team. Good job on your finals. So any questions, just put them in the chat or raise your hand and Dave can help moderate. Good job team.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, the smart quizzing, you relaxed a bit to say it's really good for quick temperature checks. And I think that's what Mentimeter kind of positions themselves for, quick temperature checks. I know you mentioned Mentimeter is one of those tools that's out there. So can you just talk a little bit more about what you did to put smart quizzing and quick temperature checks inside of Zoom versus just showing a Mentimeter survey for a quick temperature check, a quiz in Mentimeter, and doing it that way? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I can go for this. So, what Mentimeter allows you to do quick temperature checks, but it isn't persistent on basically telling you who answered. So it's kind of user agnostic, which means you kind of don't know who's been answering unless you submit it, unless they enter their name first, and then they start answering questions, and then you have to tie that out supposedly with your Zoom conferencing, knowing like, oh, this is the name here and this is the name here. And also, if you want to start to do supposedly groupings on top of that, you have to find a way to export that data from Mentimeter, put it in Excel, make the groups, and then maybe set up a group activity the next day. In addition, there's I know Mentimeter allows you to basically put these questions on a slide, and then you can switch between them, or it's another platform that you have to go to and you have to put the questions there. But it doesn't really allow you to put questions on the spot since it does need a bit of meditation. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. And just to expand upon a little bit, yeah, the real benefit of having things in the SKey is definitely the contextual assistance, such that you can, any information that students respond with is kind of tied to the student profile. And this is really important in the data export, where it exports students' notes, their participation statistics, and also their how well they've been performing. And so teachers often use these notes, or from our interviews, like teachers would really like these notes because it helps with grading at the end. And so having it very organized and contextual helps both with in the classroom when it comes to taking that data and using it constructively for breakout rooms, but also afterwards when it can be really organized and it's all archived.
I've got a question. If your team was brought in to work on the Zoom team, what feature would you work on first?
Can I answer this, or Bob, do you have more spite than me?
No, you go first. I'll fill the holes if I see something missing.
Okay. So definitely the software development kit. So basically, SDK is written is that there are individual SDKs for each platform. And so first off, we would like to bring a lot of the features which are in the C++ version of the SDK over into some of the more
a bit more
applicable platforms like
Yeah.
Electron. Like, we would really appreciate having a cross-platform app that can have access to the SDK, but also getting the SDK to work itself. We've been using a C++ wrapper, and a lot of the functionality was just not implemented, and it wasn't stated in the documentation anywhere which functionalities was not wrapped. And also, a lot of the functionality that were in the SDK itself were broken, particularly the breakout room creations, which Bob, take it
Yeah,
away.
which wasn't discovered until we noticed it. And we commented in another comment that really pushed that question up. And it wasn't discovered until April that this was broken. This was an API that's been around for the past 4 years with that breakout room API, and no one discovered it was broken. So we're kind of a bit agitated on that.
So if we were joining the Zoom team, we would definitely improve the SDK.
I think there's also some like some really long, like stretched out communication times. So like our team sometimes had to wait for like a month, like in order to get like responses, like to complete like a thread of responses. So I think that's like something that I'd also look into if I get hired by a Zoom team.
Yeah, one of those things was, sorry, maybe there's another question, but we could really go on for this forever.
Yeah, I guess like one last thing is that we would also like the breakout ability to manage breakout rooms without being in a breakout room, which is separate from the SDK, particularly because of the way Zoom's currently implemented. It would teach each breakout room like a separate meeting, which is really not great in terms of managing meetings or classrooms. So we'd really like to build some functionality that helps bridge the gap to administer breakout rooms when the host isn't in one.
Thanks.
Okay, that was time.
Oh, we're sorry.
No, congratulations on a good finals and a full answer to that question. Great job, team. If you can turn your mics and cameras off, we'll get you out of the spotlight. And if civrep is ready to step up, we will spotlight you. All right, that's all of you. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, so hello everyone. We're Team civrep and welcome to our finals presentation. This is our team and our instructors are Dave Silva and John Dessler. Here's our agenda for today. After a quick intro, we'll dive into our design, art, and tech before entering a wrap-up for our semester. So civrep is a discovery client project that explored how transformational game design could promote civic engagement and demystification of public administration in university students. Meet our client, Ron Idoko, the Diversity and Multicultural Program Manager at UPitt. He's an extremely civically engaged citizen, passionate about promoting civic learning. He's tried multiple ways of approaching this topic and has asked for feedback from his students about how he could best teach this subject. One student's suggestion that repeatedly came up was gamification of the material. Intrigued, Ron set off to try and see what a game about civic learning could look like. Ron first created an in-person multiplayer activity. After successfully playtesting it though, he wasn't exactly sure how to proceed, and this is where civrep came in. We took the materials from the activity and prototyped, playtested, and iterated until we reached our final prototype, a single-player air console game that will help Ron find his next steps in future development. Our final prototype is a game where players roleplay as a city council member, and it has 4 main sections: character creation, research, public hearing, and bill crafting. In the first section, players are able to create a customizable character and choose a committee to lead as a city council member. In the second section, players can research on a given topic. They can do things like read and write letters and interview and converse with citizens to help players form their own positions on the bill. In the public hearing, Players can listen to citizens give short speeches on what they think about the bill in order to get a better first-hand perspective on the issue. Finally, in the bill crafting section, players choose which amendments to include in the final bill and must take into account what the NPC council members think about the issue before drafting up a proposal that has enough support to be passed into law. Our prototype has helped Ron get a better feel for how gamified civic learning could look like and help him be in a position to gather more support and traction around his idea for future development. Next, let's discuss further about how we designed civrep by passing over the mic to Annie.
Thank you, Yuji. Now we'll talk about civrep's design. Civrep helped our client identify practical ways to gamify learning about public administration. Throughout the semester, we faced a series of design challenges. The first big challenge was how to accurately portray public administration in a game. Through research and help from SMEs, such as Councilperson Strasburger, we discovered and incorporated these following concepts into our game. Public hearings are valuable occasions where citizens can directly express their opinions to their representatives, and by including it in civrep, we hope to introduce this important event to our player. In reality, writing letters, emails, or calling the office is how people can reach their representatives, and we put reading and replying to letters in our game to get players thinking about how citizens' engagement can impact local government. Depending on what players submitted as the final bill, the city metrics will change to reflect the consequences of their decisions. Metric changes were designed so there is always a trade-off for every decision, and we received positive feedback from the playtesters that this helped them feel responsible for the city. Lastly, we captured the social dynamics between representatives and the people by using political capital. Players gain or lose political capital depending on whether they deliver their promises. We also showed citizen reactions to the bill at the end of the game, and many playtesters said this made them feel like their decisions actually matter in the game. Another challenge we faced was how to best design the mobile interface. civrep has a lot of words in it, and much of the content must be read on this tiny little mobile screen. We iterated on our design so the content wouldn't seem so overwhelming. One thing we did was use a warmer style to make it more approachable. We found that this new style has made civrep much more welcoming, and many playtesters responded favorably to this new design. We also created various NPCs, and playtesters enjoyed when the content was presented with a more personal and human touch. Lastly, when we added interactivity to our content, we use a simple button-based design so that players can easily engage with the content instead of struggling with the interface. Next, we designed a single-player version of civrep because our client wanted to explore how to make the game more accessible and allow students to play at their own pace. In our multiplayer version, voting on the bill was very discussion-oriented. To convert this to single-player, we introduced the concept of amendments and NPC council members with their own agendas. Now, when trying to pass a bill, players will learn about compromising and considering the trade-offs between the various amendments and the support of other council members. Finally, how do we use these prototypes we made to help our client? We learned from our playtest that we have a working game design for our client, and the next challenge for him is gathering funds for further development, and we have something ready for him to demonstrate the value and importance of civrep to potential sponsors. We streamlined the playtest process and created a playtest kit. Our playtest kit is located on our website. It contains instructions, a link to the game, and a post-game survey. We're hoping that this setup will allow our client to easily run playtests and showcase the work. Next, I'll hand it off to Simon to talk about civrep's art.
Thanks, Annie. So after halves, we keep iterating on the characters with the principle of addressing diversities. We eventually came up with the idea to provide player with some elements of the character and let player customize their own representative. We use 3 different colors to represent the committees that player can join, and use this unique color as the overall tone of each character in order to ease the race and gender problem. The idea of our NPC Hamilton originally came from our political capital concept. At first, we thought of using a piggy bank to symbolize this idea. When we decided to explore the possibility of single player, we realized that it's very important to guide player while they proceed. So we decided to bring this piggy bank alive as Hamilton, a robotic assistant for representative of Civ City. We realized at the very beginning that civic learning itself could be an intimidating topic for some of our target audience. So one of our goals on environment was to visually make the game more approachable. We tried to achieve this by rounding the edges of our models. Also, we made the shape to be more stylized to create a more inviting home office atmosphere for our representative. Another thing we tried is to use different texture, color, and lighting to differentiate each section of the room. We received positive feedback from our playtesters, and we'll hand off the entire scene as well as each individual assets, so future team can customize their representative office. We also got some feedback from the soft about different style between the UI and the environment, so we made some adjustment. On the mobile screen, we try to flatten out all the button and make the icon more stylized while changing the shape to match the environment instead of general patterns. On PC screen, we unify the font and use a similar warm tone color to make the UI even more friendly to our players. Next, I'll hand over to Jisup to talk about our tech challenges.
Thank you, Simon. Today, I'm going to talk about two main challenges. The first challenge is there are too many different phones, especially the diverse screen size was the main problem. After research, we found out that we can handle 90% of users by dealing with a few screen aspect ratios. I divided the controller into two parts to make the controller work for every phone. The top part is responsive and the bottom part is fixed. I made the bottom buttons with code, so it always shows exactly what you want it to display regardless of screen size. By dividing implementation methods, I made the game work on various screen sizes. The second challenge is iterations. For the first version, we had 30 mobile pages, but our team is ambitious. Now we have 92 interactive mobile pages and we made 5 major iterations. On average, I had 1 week to implement each iteration. It looked impossible at first, but after learning some lessons, I was able to make fast iterations in time. The first lesson is to ask for help. As you can see, the original button text was 2 lines, and I asked Annie and Yuji to change it into 1 line. It might look like a small change, but by making many minor changes, I was able to save a lot of time, and I used that time to solve more critical problems. The second lesson is to prepare for changes. Out of habit, I created the button selection effect using code. But as the game was getting more complicated, it took a lot of time and energy to make unprepared changes using code. I learned a lesson, and I tried to prepare for changes. For example, when I make another function that does the same thing as the previous one, I didn't merge them, but I made a new function and kept it independent. By doing this, I was able to implement new designs without many changes. Now, Martin is going to talk about project reflections.
Thanks, Jason. We see our prototype as a tool for our client to guide the future development. And one thing we think could be really helpful is to record what players were doing in the prototype. So we decided to record the time playtesters spend on different phases in the game, and also the number of attempts on dropping the final bell. In this way, we can visualize the data and see whether the design is our goal. We also listed playtesting as one of the key metrics for the semester, and we had a lot of reflection regarding this part. Our goal is to create civically engaged citizens, and we hope to observe some player transformation in our playtesters. We have conducted a decent number of playtests. However, we found that many of our playtesters who signed up were highly civically engaged citizens who did not necessarily need the transformation. This means that we need to be careful about what we are looking for in the playtest feedback. In the early stage of the project, instead of spending too much time building up a fully functional prototype, our team conducted a series of virtual paper prototype with Google Slides. It was a really great way to start with. It saved us a lot of time between iterations and make sure everyone on the team was on the same page. It also provide us with data and feedbacks, and thus giving us a solid direction to follow in the future. Later this semester, as we started developing the prototypes, we used playtests as milestones to set our short-term goals. This is our calendar after halves. We have conducted 22 playtests in total. We will set the date for a playtest and decide what we would like to test in this playtest. And then finally, we plan our work schedule accordingly. In this way, we're able to keep our project in scope and conduct as many meaningful playtests as possible. Another question we keep asking ourselves in the semester is that if we start over, we will still choose Air Console as the platform. Air Console is actually a powerful tool for multiplayer prototypes and playtests, especially on Zoom. With a share screen, Air Console allows our team to understand what the playtests were seeing and also what was going on in the game. However, as we start developing in a single player, Air Console began to lose its advantage. Using two screens for a single player experience could be kind of tricky and was not really reasonable. So overall, Air Console was a reasonable choice at the beginning of the semester. But for a single player prototype, we would like to try some other technology choices, such as Visual Novel engines. Now I'll pass it back to Yuji to wrap up.
Thanks, Martin. So for civrep, our key metrics were client requirements, playtesting, and documentation. As a discovery project, we prototyped and playtested rapidly to create an accessible civic learning game prototype for our client. We'll also pass off our design documentation and our playtest data. We have two main deliverables. First, the documentation is to help our client gain traction for the game. We have recordings and data from 22 playtests with 30 unique playtesters, and endorsements from a Pittsburgh City Council member and other SMEs who have worked in local government that the game accurately depicts the legislative process while keeping it approachable. Also, we've been accepted to host a workshop at the Connected Learning Summit of 2021. Our second deliverable is our final prototype that has been published on the Air Console website, along with a manual we prepared so that our client can easily access and share the game with anyone. We'll be sharing a link to our playtest kit in the chat, so please feel free to check that out. Before we wrap up, we would like to extend a special thank you to everyone who helped us with this project, from playtesting and providing valuable insights to giving our team guidance throughout the semester. So to recap, we're Team civrep, and we are a discovery client project that explores how transformational game design can promote civic engagement and demystification of public administration and university students. Thank you, and that's a civrep. We're now open for questions.
Okay, congratulations, team. Good finals. Good job. And if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat or raise your hand and Dave can help moderate. Congrats, team. Oh, and there's a happy client in the chat.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thanks also for sharing your experience. It was nice to play last week. Get a better sense of everything that's there. There's a lot there. I have a question because your client would like to keep using this and do research with it. And to do that, it often helps to know what are players doing, what choices are they making, what are they doing inside the experience. I don't know if you were able to try to put in any in-game metrics because of this Air Console, different device type setup. Did you think about in-game metrics? And if so, how are you tracking those? And if not, what might you tell the client about putting in-game metrics in later?
I can take this one. Thanks, Mike. So for now, we have in-game metrics to track the playtime in different phases, like the research and build crafting, and also the number of build drafted. And we collect data by having a post-game survey, and that's how we're doing right now. But for the Air Console platform, it provides a feature that we can actually record the in-game metric into a local file. And all the players' data will be collected into this same file, and our client can use this file to do some data visualization and analysis. And for the different choices for the lecture and the interview, yes, we can definitely record that.
And you're going to tell the client how to do this, how to do the Air Console tracking.
This will be recording the handout documentation.
Excellent. Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, so you said you guys used Air Console, but you said there was another platform that you really wanted to use instead, since it would have been better on the phone. What was it again?
Visual novel engine. The reason is that we're shifting from multiplayer to single player. Multiplayer was like a very natural choice for as for Air Console, because we have the BBW experience for the Air Console as for multiplayer. But for single player, Air Console is not built for single player. That's one of the things. Another thing is we had in the single player experience, we have a lot of sequencing. Like you will first get the introduction, and then you'll do the research, and then you will have the hearing, and after that you'll do the drafting. This kind of sequencing is it's not like very convenient to program under the Air Console framework. So I saw like Visual Novel engine could be helpful, because Visual Novel itself is a sequencing thing. So it's kind of fits the nature of the single player. Yes.
Okay, but how come don't you just program all of this in Unity with Air Console? And I think you can export to Unity to Android phone, right? Or maybe I'm missing something.
Sorry, I don't really understand your question.
I know when you program with Air Console, you're programming with Unity and then you export it to an Air Console. But I'm wondering, but I know that Unity also can export to a phone or export to a Android phone or to an iOS. I'm wondering what would be missing there.
Yeah. So what will be missing is Air Console framework required. So we have two screens, as you can see in the slides. One is the PC screen, that is the main game logic. Another screen is the phone screen, that is a separate, controlled by a separate file. And that's not written in the C#, which is the language that Unity uses. It is actually written in the JavaScript. And also, as you mentioned, in the later half of the semester, the phone controller file was so large. GitHub was suffering it a lot. It is over 2,000 lines of code, and it's kind of hard to change it.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Time for one more. Okay, congratulations, team. Good job with your finals, and congrats to all the teams who went today. Great job on your final presentations for this Tuesday. So I hope everybody else has a good rest of your day, and faculty, we can adjourn into another Zoom for some grading. Everybody else take care and have a good day. See you all tomorrow.